video, I'm going to dive into the four main kinds of attachment styles that we have, and in particular, how it plays out in relationships and what some of those core wounds are that are underneath. Because when we understand those wounds, we can understand the person that we're with better, not because we want to walk around them and walk on eggshells, but we can have more compassion. We can take it less personally. And then that's when real healing can occur. So the first and easiest one to explain of the attachment styles is what's called secure attachment. That is very rare for people to just arrive into their adulthood and relationship life with a secure attachment style. That's someone who's confident and reciprocal in their relationships. They're not really reactive. They're very resilient when there are issues. And people who have this were raised and who are secure in their attachment were raised where their bids for affection and attention and support were accepted and returned when they were growing up. They had caretakers who were there for them and consistent and didn't offer conditional love and didn't abandon them emotionally. They weren't severely abused. Or the other group that can have a secure attachment style are people who have had really traumatic upbringings, used to have a more dysfunctional or more conflictual, let's say, attachment style, and now have done the healing work, have a secure attachment style. You can change your attachment style. How about that? Now, there are three other attachment styles, and these are the ones where you're going to see a lot of problems in relationship. The first is the anxious attachment style. Some call it the preoccupied attachment style. These are people who are very emotional, very turbulent, very up and down. They have a lot of fantasies about relationships. They meet someone, on the first date and are ready to marry them on the second, and have, named all their children and decided what color to paint their house, So there are people who jump in really quickly. There are people who are really hungry for that bond. They create bonds sometimes before the other person is even that interested in them. And they struggle in relationships because they're so hungry for that bond, they'll give their own truth away. Or they will give themselves away in order to keep that person. So their security is found outside themselves. These are typically people that we would know as codependent, like me. I'm a recovering codependent. So people who have the anxious type of attachment never feel really secure in their worthiness of love, often had very chaotic childhoods, had emotional abandonment, physical abandonment, abuse. Love was very conditional, and often they had to give themselves away in order to receive love, or they had to be the nurturer in order to receive nurturing, or they had to achieve in order to get approval. So love was very transactional for them. And if the other person, that caretaker, wasn't okay, they weren't okay. So a lot of their efforts were about buffering up those initial caretakers rather than the reverse, how it's supposed to happen in childhood. So people who have anxious attachment styles, when you're in a relationship with them, they will be really insecure in your attachment to them. They'll often be really jealous and suspicious. They won't always say exactly what they think or feel. They'll often be more passive aggressive and do things indirectly, or eventually just blow up after holding all these things they're upset or angry about that you didn't even know about inside. They can be a little manipulative. They will be very transactional in their relationships. They will also often be manipulative about getting what they need and getting their needs met because they never learned that it was okay to just ask for what you need. And they often aren't really attuned to their bodies because they're so outwardly directed toward you or toward the world. They're very empathic, but it can be hard to be in a relationship with someone who isn't that direct and has trouble being authentic and tends to be more passive aggressive and is really insecure, right? Makes sense. How about the dismissive or avoidant attachment style? These are people who tend to isolate. They're ambivalent, right? They want love in their life, but they tend to be really emotionally distant. They grew up in families where they were made to feel horrible about themselves. So these are people who you might qualify as on the narcissist spectrum. I mean, listen, we all have elements of codependence. We all have elements of narcissism. We all have elements of all of this. This is a spectrum. But people who have an avoidant attachment style tend to be more on that narcissistic edge, because the core wound of a narcissist is, I absolutely suck, but I'm unwilling and unable to fully be with how much I think I suck. So I'm going to be grandiose. I'm going to think I'm the greatest thing. And if you say the slightest thing, even out of the blue, even try and help me, like I have something in my teeth that embarrasses me or scratches at that wound of unworthiness that I have, then I'm going to fly into a rage, right? That's how a narcissist behaves. Now, everyone who's got an avoidant attachment issue or quality isn't a narcissist necessarily, but they keep you at arm's length. You never, they don't let you see their authentic self. They don't even really know what their authentic self is. They will come on really strong in the beginning and then pull back once the real intimacy or the work of intimacy begins. They have a hard time being vulnerable, being authentic, letting someone fully into their heart, trusting, right? These are all issues because they had parents that were horrible to them and hypercritical and often really abusive. And that's the core issue with someone who's even on the narcissistic spectrum, is that the wound underneath is that they have to control everything. They have to feel good about themselves at all times, because right around the corner or right under the surface is this bubbling well of self-loathing that they're always trying to escape. Okay. Now, the fourth and final form of an attachment style is the fearful or the avoidant one. Boy, are these hard. They are very unpredictable, very dramatic. If the avoidant type could be dismissive, woo-wee. The dismissive one often is pretty consistent. They might push and pull you a little bit as a way of maintaining control, but it's almost conscious. The person with the fearful or avoidant attachment style is all over the place. They want to glom onto you and merge with you 1 minute. And as soon as they merge with you, they are demonizing you the next. They are extremely emotionally labile, meaning they're all over the place. These are people that you might see diagnosed as a borderline personality disorder. And boy, is this hard. This is my least favorite, honestly, not that I don't love all people, but it's my least favorite group to treat because it's such an early wound, pre-conscious almost. It often happens in the first 3 years of life. And it's when they didn't get, in that first 3 years of life, there's this phase that Erickson, one of the key, teachers or authors, when you get trained in education and therapy, especially with children, he talks about the stages of development. And the key stage of development that gets wounded in the person with the avoidant type of attachment is trust, mistrust.